politicians are very good at playing with words. They always talk about gun control. How about right control? Because when you go against the Second Amendment, that's our right. That's our God-given right, not only by God, but by the founding fathers. So why don't you just call it what it really is, right control? You're taking our rights away. You cannot regulate evil. Evil is evil, and evil is always going to be persistent, and it's always going to be here. So why get rid of our ability to protect ourselves? The Second Amendment right protects the rest of them, and it protects us. It protects your home, your body, and your spirit, because without it, how are you going to protect yourself? Don't be a sheep. Don't follow just because it's popular. Think for yourself. Be yourself. Be that individual that God made you to be. He wasn't born to follow. He was born to lead.
Welcome back to the Real News with Lucretia and Dave. Like I said, we have Mr. General King coming up at any given moment, and then at 7 o'clock we have Ms. Beverly Patton coming on. And then, like I said, y'all, tomorrow, make sure y'all keep us in your prayers when it comes to the House situation. Like I said, we go into mediation tomorrow. I want to take it back to Superior Court, but we're going to go through mediation on the House. We're not offering them nothing. They bought stolen property. We want our damn home back. I don't care what happens at the federal level. Once our attorney sues them, I'm over the illegal land grab. Thank y'all, and I'm not opening my eyes because I am been so tensed up for the last 5 years, not only fighting AAG, but fighting this damn illegal foreclosure on our property. Tomorrow, y'all, we will be going to mediation. Out of all of y'all and everything that we have went through, we have blown through $50,000 fighting for our home. Now I understand why 3 companies inside of Georgia own 30,000 single-family homes. This illegal land grab by the World Economic Forum, you're going to own nothing like it, where his grandparents owned this place and built it from scratch since 1983. And it's sad that a reverse mortgage company would accept fraudulent forged signatures. That's neither here nor there. Keep us in your prayers tomorrow. And do not forget, we're going to need help at the NRA convention. I am running for the board of directors. I will also be on Media Row. So if you would like to get out there and help pass out flyers, pass out pens, come on Media Row, get interviewed. Y'all please donate, and share. So Dave, y'all, our next guest. Y'all know how I get with generals, admirals, captains, colonels, lieutenants, you name it. This is a general, y'all, and we know that's huge. That's like, I'm just like a scruff. This is a general. Not only he's a general, he works under the Gold Dome. Not only does he work under the Gold Dome, he has a lot to do with different commissioner seats and what's going on inside of the state of Georgia. Not only the state of Georgia, but the United States as a whole. Not only that, he got the ear of the president. So everybody, I want to introduce y'all to General King. Hey, General.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me in your show.
And I forgot to tell everybody, he Popo too. He's Popo. It's not a bad thing, but when we can ask questions, and like I said, he doesn't work in the White House, he has an ear. We can ask questions, and he might could talk about it, and he might not could talk about it. How are you doing? Can you give everybody just a little bit of your background? I could, but you can do your own self justice.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I have I think a funny story. My father's from South Georgia, but he was a merchant marine sailor that fought during World War II and went to live in Mexico and married my mom. So that's where you hear the funny Spanish and Southern accent kind of roll together. And so I grew up in Mexico. Spanish is my first language. But then I came to Atlanta when I was 17 and a half to go to school. And to pay my way through school, I joined the Atlanta Police Department. And that started my love affair as a serving our community. I never worked north of North Avenue, if you're familiar with Atlanta. So I always worked Southeast Atlanta. I was one of the original Red Dog officers that when the Red Dog Squad started.
I know what the Red Dogs are.
I know. It's when our community was desperate to deal with the epidemic of crack cocaine, the city of Atlanta leaders started looking, we need to do something different because what we're doing is not working. And I think it's very similar to the crisis that we're having today. So I joined the Atlanta Police Department and had a fantastic career. I ended up being the chief of police in Doraville, which is the most
I know where Northville
international
at.
crowded community in Georgia. 17 languages spoken on Buford Highway. But I also joined the Army as a private. I was a private in the tank unit. Fell in love with serving my community, serving my state, and serving my nation. And I just retired 2 years ago as a major general, as you said. And the only reason I say that is to highlight the fact that no other country in the world would allow that to happen. Nobody, I mean, I was born in Mexico. The Mexican army would not allow me to go from private to general. Only in America this is possible. And so this is why I've been so passionate about serving. The governor appointed me to be the insurance commissioner, and then I ran for office across the state. I've never forgotten the fact that the governor and the public says, clean up the mess in the insurance commissioner's office because there was a mess.
Well,
And
Jim
so we
Beck,
reformed.
Jim Beck decided to make it a mess to two tough titties that he's doing time now.
That is correct. We have two insurance commissioners from Georgia in federal prison. And so my job was to bring order to the chaos that we had in that office. But I never forgot that my job is not to work for insurance companies. My job is to work for the people. And I never forget that. My job is to make sure that the people have an advocate when dealing with insurance companies. Now, I can't wreck the industry in the process. But my job is to make sure that we answer those calls and complaints. We've been able to recover $98 million back to consumers' pockets, not to the government, back to consumers as a result of our investigations. We've issued the largest fines in Georgia history to insurance companies when they break the rules. And so I'm very proud of what we've been able to do with our small agency. And then, of course, working with the governor and the rest of the team in the Gold Dome, both Republicans and Democrats, to
Well,
make sure that we bring common sense and good governance to our job. I mean, I wasn't dreaming 6 years ago being your insurance commissioner. I was very happy being a chief of police, and I was very happy being a military officer, defending this country every time we got called. Uh,
So what do you think
we
about this then, Commissioner? Because if I'm in insurance and I have to take a continuous education class every 2 years on ethics to polish up on insurance, why can't the legislators do the same thing every 2 years, every election time, get polished up on continuous education when it comes to the Georgia State Constitution and then the rules and the ethics? Because them walking out last week, that was a hot mess. That was a disgrace, and especially
I
in the
was
Hill.
shocked. I was shocked. You know what? If you're gonna make that kind of stand, make it on something that is important to mom and pop, people on the south side of Atlanta, just as much as the folks in North Georgia. It has to be something that you're willing to put your reputation. I don't know if ethics could have changed that. I'll be honest, but make it something that counts. Three inmates who committed felonies getting state paid sex change operations. I'm not sure the rest. I don't think that makes common sense down on Moreland Avenue,
Nope.
and it sure as hell doesn't make sense in anywhere else in Georgia.
And
But
on
I was
Candler Road
disappointed.
either. It was not a disappointment. That was a disgrace that the Democrats actually hung their hat on that hill to die on when you couldn't put it on anything else that would help their constituents. I don't care if it's all in the state of Georgia. That is what pissed y'all off. So I'm kind of glad that they did that. They showed their hands because I don't think they're going to have that support in 2026 that they think. Two questions for you. What do you feel about Atlanta becoming a sanctuary city? And then are you running for senator?
Wow. I'll tell you, Doraville, there's a lot of pressure on police departments and chiefs to to declare so-called, and it's politicians are the ones that declare their status as sanctuary cities. I have deported more criminal illegal aliens than probably almost anybody else is in office today. I use the law to remove the cancer because I tell you, the Tren de Aragua, all these gang members are affecting the Latino community more than anyone. And that to me is, how do you stand by and allow the criminality in our communities to be done by an individual from another country? These folks are getting funding, they're getting benefits that even our veterans don't get. Our veterans are sleeping under those bridges in downtown Atlanta. And the fact that these folks get to stay in hotels, I think that to me is criminal. I think it's just absolutely wrong. As an American, as a veteran, we are better than that. And so for I think for a city official to make, and I haven't seen yet in Atlanta, but they've played a lot. They've got a lot of money from the from the previous administration to do this.
Not
And
only
I think
them.
they could have used that money for a hell of a lot better things that our community desperately needs. Job programs. I mean, all the things that we scream about, homelessness. We need to take care of Americans first.
Yes. What about the $2 billion that Stacey Abrams collected? And not only that, her being fined with her campaign contributions.
And she is a climate change expert now? My goodness. I mean, supposedly she gave these special stoves down in Sumter County. I want to go to Sumter County to see these magic stoves. I mean, $2 billion. Look at all the things we could have done to fix in Savannah, in Atlanta, in Columbus, in Macon, in all our communities that desperately need things. The hurricane damage from Helene, Valdosta, Augusta. How do you look at people in their face when you go to those communities, to the Rotaries or the city council meetings, and tell them that you used $2 billion or you wanted to use $2 billion for that kind of nonsense? To me, it's criminal. And somebody ought to take a hard look at this. And there needs to be some accounting. And that's the problem that I'm having with folks that we send to Washington. They're not holding folks accountable. And that's why we send people to Washington to hold bureaucracies accountable. When they're not doing the people's will, we ought to remove them and we ought to vote them out.
We are dealing with a warlock and an ass off. How you gonna do that?
We got to show up and vote. We got to ask the hard questions. When were you thinking about Georgia when you made this vote of not continuing to allow young men to compete against girls in sports, to take away their scholarship opportunities? I'm a father of a daughter. That to me is, nobody should stand in the way of any young lady that wants to compete and get a scholarship to better themselves. And the fact that we have men being able to, well, you can't make it, I guess, in the male sports, you just jump, just identify yourself as something else. I think that's really anti-women when you think about it.
Now the funds that was released from FEMA, because she done put it up here about 2 times, and I want to get it out there. She said she is still waiting on help with her roof from Helena. Now that FEMA has released some funds, did Georgia get a portion so it would help the hurricane victims?
I tell you, I got attacked merciless by the left when I was saying to cities and counties, do not sign contracts expecting, because we had 2 senators and we had a bunch of Democrats coming to communities promising 100% reimbursement. And I says, do not believe them. Don't sign any contract because you're going to be left holding the bag on this. Folks are still waiting down in South Georgia for the FEMA funds because you have 2 senators showing up. Oh, don't worry. We're going to have 100% reimbursement. That money was being used for camps to house, illegal aliens.
Wow.
And so what happened is that they were planting the seeds to make a confrontation between local communities and members of Congress to reauthorize more money. It wasn't because they had money in the bank. The money had already been spent. And that to me was criminal, to go to these communities and promise 100% reimbursement, knowing that the money was never there.
Wow, wow, wow. And here's the bigger one, because you remember during these hurricanes, and now that we found behind the scene, they was telling FEMA people, workers, not to help people that had United States flags or Trump flags, and you might as well go ahead and say Georgia flags. They got no help.
That's why I fully support either a total disbandment of FEMA, let this have a block grant, send it straight to the states, and let the states be accountable and responsible and be able to be audited. Or redo FEMA from the ground up. Because I tell you, as an organization, folks in North Carolina are still begging. I mean, the Mennonites, church groups have been the most effective and quickest responses to every community in Georgia that I've ever seen. We've been there in those communities, dragging insurance companies to make sure we do claims villages so everybody's claim gets inputted, and I hold folks accountable to make sure they don't play games with people's claims.
Wow. See, this is why I'm glad we got the insurance commissioner. Here's another one. You're running for Senate. You think I'm going to not ask that again when you just went straight over it?
Oh, so right now you need to ask this gentleman that lives out there on West Paces Ferry and his wife what he's going to do. Once he decides what he's going to do, if Brian Kemp decides that he's not running, I'm seriously, thinking and preparing myself and my family to challenge Mr. Ossoff, because California should not have 4 senators, because Georgia has no senators right now.
Woo! I like what you just said. California should not have 4 senators. Well, you remember that Stacey Abrams said, "Hey, at the by Southwest Conference, all y'all people in California, just come over here just for a little while. We can change the political system in Georgia." And if you really think about it, we was at one point 10 million. Now it was 11 million. Now we're over 12 million citizens. How do we not blow our state?
The key is we have to stay engaged. We have to help educate folks. There's a reason why they're coming from these states, from what I call failed states. There's a reason they're coming from these failed states. Understand that you came here for a reason. Listen to the folks that have been all wrong. Listen to the folks that've gone through all the false promises that the Democratic Party has given to the folks in our inner cities, the places where I serve proudly. So, I mean, some of the best communities in Georgia are Southeast Atlanta. I'm proud of that I grew up as a young man, as a young police officer there, trained by Coretta Scott King, Eva Davis, folks that don't even know some of these, folks that in the rest of Georgia don't know, but folks in Southeast Atlanta know who these people are.
Do you ever think in our lifetime that's going to turn red? Ever?
I think so. Look, you can't be an Atlanta police officer and not be an eternal optimist. I am an eternal optimist. Folks are tired of being lied to. When I go and talk to folks inside the city, I first go and find where the veterans are, because the veterans are really the core that keeps our society. They know what the sacrifice, they know the cost, what happens when we don't pay attention to big things. And folks are tired of being lied to. And we saw this in this last election. People turned out incredible numbers that the Democratic Party has lost their way. And they keep on digging by walking out on key votes. And until they find their way, we need to be able to take advantage and bring common sense.
Not only are you a veteran, you're a major general, and you have the ear of the White House. Well, you also have the ear of the VA, which is, Doug Collins, a Georgia boy.
Doug Collins.
With all of the homeless people in Atlanta, do you think that you could start a nonprofit that you might be a part of to start turning some of these abandoned warehouses before they're gentrified into actual small, tiny homes or apartments that is fundable by the VA from their benefits if necessary?
I tell you, Doug Collins has been an incredible, friend to not only to Georgia, but he's a veteran as well, so he gets it. I tell you, we can't just treat the symptom. We have to we have to be focused on outcomes. What actually works? Putting somebody in a tiny home is part of the solution. but it's only a minuscule. We have to deal with the mental health, the drug addiction, retraining so these veterans have skills to get into. And then we have to go find business leaders who will take a chance in hiring a veteran that will need support and mentorship. But we can't just treat the symptom. I will tell you, you've heard the crises of the horrible numbers of the VA hospitals. I mean, Claremont Road here in Atlanta, they lost 13,000 files of veterans. I get sick and tired of watching veterans standing there, Vietnam and Korea war veterans standing in line waiting for treatment. They need to be taken care of in their local communities by a local doctor, and the VA just needs to pay the bill to get them better.
How about
Instead
a
of
test?
trying to support a bureaucracy.
What about a closed
Because
test
right
for
now,
you?
a lot of people are making a lot of noise. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, what about a closed
A lot of
thing for
people
you?
make.
But I was,
I'm
what I
sorry,
was
say
saying,
that again, please.
because there are so many like malls, shopping centers, different places, it can be all encompassing. It's to the part where you have the mental clinic in there, it's training center in there, it's drug addiction in there. You could put a farm in there, you could put trade, FHA in there, you can teach automotive classes, and you handpick maybe 20 to 30 different veterans, and you start this, or maybe it's a ground up to make it self-sufficient. You give them 18 months to do all of this. Not only are you helping with the problem, you're getting down to the root of it. You're rebuilding, you're tearing them down, not really tearing them down, but you're building them back up from scratch. And it's all veteran oriented, but it's brought to you by the state and backed up by the VA.
But we have to hold folks accountable on the outcomes, because too many programs are run by non-government agencies. And this is how the Democratic Party has been able to move taxpayers' money and throw it into programs that have no accountability. Who has been held accountable when a program doesn't work? It doesn't give you the results.
No one.
Nobody. Nobody. And we need to stop doing that kind of. We need to look at a full wraparound service, center, like you say. That's a great description, the way you describe it. But if they don't provide outcomes, we ought to not be just throwing money after bad.
Booyah. That is where you are the insurance commissioner, and you go in there and you actually look at the books. I done gave you a whole nother position that you need to fill. But at least veterans are quicker to talk to you than they would regularly talk to anybody else that's not their brother or sister in arms and in life. Most veterans won't go out here and talk to ordinary different therapists or something like that. They only want to talk to their brothers and sisters in arms. So maybe having it just all veterans run this organization that might be retired, that might need a will to live, and giving them a position and a job to go out there and stop the suicide at 33 per day and give them a reason to live because you're going out there reaching out your hand.
This is my message to veterans. You sign an oath of enlistment that, and when you retire, they tell you you are transferred to the retired ranks. You're never relieved of the duty to serve your fellow soldier. You're never relieved of our oath of office. When we swear to the Constitution, has no expiration date. We are bound for the rest of our natural lives to continue serving this nation. And if we get called to go serve and serve fellow, I can't think of a more honorable thing to do to go serve fellow veterans that we've shared this incredible experience, not only in harm's way, but what else we can give. Veterans are focused. They're focused. You give them a task and they will go after it, regardless of the politics. They either go over the obstacle or reduce the obstacle, but the obstacle doesn't stay in place. And so that's why it's a pleasure serving around incredible men and women that I have the privilege to serve alongside. And I will never do anything that's going to disappoint or make people ashamed that they've served in harm's way alongside with me. And that's what I'm focused on.
I have one more question, and we got 2 minutes left before the top of the hour. I gotta ask this: what was your sweetheart law or a policy that you got passed this year that will be for the betterment of Georgia citizens?
Court reform.
See, I'm hearing bad things and good things.
I'm telling you, we now have small businesses in Southeast Atlanta that can afford premise liability insurance
Okay.
because right now they were being crushed. All this new development downtown, they're trying to redo downtown Atlanta. They couldn't find insurance because nobody wanted to insure them because they were afraid of lawsuits. Don't get me wrong. I think everybody should get their fair day in court. I have no problem at all. People who have been harmed need to be made whole. But we ought to cut down some of the lawyers making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Look at the outdoor advertisement. Everyone, we spent over $63 million in lawyers advertisement in Georgia. There's a reason people are getting paid. But the plaintiff, the person that's been harmed, is not getting paid. And I think that's wrong.
Everybody, can you come back on one day, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed this.
And if you need for me to help you campaign for Senate, I would like to do that too. I threw that out there.
I know you did. Thank you.
So everybody, this is Master General, Major General, my state insurance commissioner, John King. Everybody, y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Dave, go ahead.
Are you a voting member of the NRA? My name is Lucretia Hughes. I will never compromise my beliefs in God, family, or country, and my Second Amendment. I am running for the board of directors of the NRA, and I would appreciate your vote. Politicians are very good at playing with words. They always talk about gun control. How about right control? Because when you go against the Second Amendment, that's our right. That's our God-given right, not only by God, but by the founding fathers. So why don't you just call it what it really is, right control? You're taking our rights away. You cannot regulate evil. Evil is evil, and evil is always going to be persistent, and it's always going to be here. So why get rid of our ability to protect ourselves? The Second Amendment right protects the rest of them, and it protects us. It protects your home, your body, and your spirit, because without it, how are you going to protect yourself? Don't be a sheep. Don't follow just because it's popular. Think for yourself. Be yourself. Be that individual that God made you to be. He wasn't born to follow. He was born to lead.
And get me a word find book tomorrow. So as we're in court, I'm doing word finding because I know my face it's going to be written on my face. So welcome to the extended Real News with Lucretia. We got one more guest, and it's going to be short, but we have one more guest, and it's